It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast, and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me is Guy Finley, who is here to discuss how we can remove the false beliefs underlying our fear, anger, and self-doubt so we can live a fulfilled, authentic life. Guy is the best-selling author of The Secret of Letting Go and 40 other works. His newest book is The Secret of Your Immortal Self, Key Lessons for Realizing the Divinity Within. Guy has been a guest on national media, and he is a contributor to Beliefnet, the Huffington Post, and our own Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. He is a director of Life of Learning Foundation. Welcome, Guy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Joan. I'm glad to speak with you again.
Guy, so many of us are searching for the purpose of our life, especially when you get to middle age. And the whirlwind of getting married, starting a career, raising kids, that begins to die down. And now it's time for us to figure out who we are. How can we find the answers? What do you recommend?
I think there's no better guide ever, actually, than our own heart. It's one of those unique situations, spiritually speaking, where most of us have been taught that the disappointments we experience in our business, in our relationships, with our personal efforts, that somehow that's an indication that something has gone wrong and that we need to change the circumstances that we're in. What I've learned over these years of writing and working with higher ideas is that the conditions we meet are always a reflection of the way we're thinking, of our consciousness, basically. And so the key for making the kind of real changes that we want is to use these disappointments, to be honest about them, and then recognize, for instance, that maybe the problem isn't that I can't make a successful business person of myself or find a lasting relationship, but rather maybe that there's something in me that has come into a mistaken idea, a false belief, that I'm going to complete myself through these things so that my entire sense of identity, my self-worth, then hinges on something that is a relationship to the world over which, by and large, no one has control. That way we can use the moments in our lives that produce this disappointment or unhappiness to become more properly introspective and to work within ourselves with the powers that we do have to make the positive changes we're looking for.
Guy, when we begin to make these changes, will we know when we're on the right path? How will we know that?
Well, remember I said that our own heart should be our guide. You've heard the idea, Joan, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Most of us have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do we think that teacher is?
The lesson that we need at that particular time.
Yes, and here's the beauty of it. It is never not appearing. Lessons ride in on the back of events. That means that life itself, although largely unseen, has a guiding, kind, and wise intelligence that is always bringing to us, moment to moment, the revelations about our own consciousness that we need in order to see that it is useless to struggle with an unwanted condition until we change the part of ourselves that has attracted it and the lesson that comes with it. It almost never dawns on us that each and every moment brings with it an opportunity to see something deeper and truer about ourselves. So the teacher that comes when the student is ready are these revelations that allow us to have a deeper understanding of our own nature. Then we can begin to make real changes, Joan.
And I think that's one of the most difficult concepts for people to understand when they're going through crisis in life, is that there's a gift from those dark events. I mean, I know it took me a really long time to view the painful experiences of my life as gifts. So when someone is going through a dark event, a traumatic period in their life, how can they use it then to find their immortal self?
Well, there's two things to this. First, I open the book with a passage, a quote from a great man that I worked with for 14 years before he died. And he said, "It is wise to seek immortality because time defeats all other ambitions." So one of the things that we learn through these heartaches and disappointments is that we had vested our sense of identity in something that, even at its best, was temporary. And that the disappointment isn't really that life changed and we lost control over something that had given us confidence, but rather that our sense of value, of worth, had been tied to something that had to change. So the teacher that appears in that moment, the real lesson, is that while it is beautiful, necessary to seek this kind of perfection, to want to be the most successful person you can, it is wiser still to recognize that these things that we do are merely mirrors through which we can see ourselves and discover within ourselves, through these very things that change, much to your point, something lives within us that cannot pass even though the conditions do.
And Guy, I want to back up for a moment because I did get ahead of myself. I started speaking about an immortal self, but I really would like you to clarify, what does that mean? What is our immortal self?
It is that part of us, and it is in all of us, that is connected to what is eternal, what is pure love, what is pure wisdom. And we can prove it, listeners. This isn't pie in the sky, and it certainly isn't New Age. How many of us have had those moments in our lives where, struggling with a situation, a condition we can't understand, and maybe we turn and we say, "Dear God, please help me. Christ, please come into my life. Buddha, please guide me," whatever it may be. And in that moment, we are suddenly given an understanding about our situation that, try as we had, we couldn't come to through our own intellect. And then suddenly there's this epiphany. And when it comes, Joan, and you can help me with this, is it not so that we realize, my God, something in me already knew that, I just couldn't get out of the way. And then we have a new wisdom and a new strength flood into us, freeing us from the condition, when in truth what we're being freed from is our misunderstanding of ourselves and our relationship to that condition. That part of us already exists. We have simply forgotten that it is within us, and that any time that we want, we can reconnect ourselves, which, by the way, is the true meaning of religion. The word religion means to reconnect with what is true, authentic, and timeless.
What about false beliefs, Guy? Is that what holds us back?
It's one of the big ones. There's no question about it. Because we're brought into a world which, first of all, is filled with misunderstanding about the purpose of our existence. How can we continue? Remember I said, follow your heart. How many times can we move into a situation, no matter what it is, and then find ourselves heartbroken, and then simply start running all over again, trying to create or control the condition, when what that situation is trying to tell us by the suffering we're going through is that we bet on the wrong horse. And one of these wrong horses, if you will, is this host of false beliefs that are poured into us at childhood. I mean, we talked about this one. Here's a major false belief, and look how deep it runs through everything. One of our big false beliefs is that we are only as valuable or important as other people agree that we are. That's deeply entrenched in us. Now, the negative effect of that false belief is that I spend my life trying to win the approval of people, or selling my soul to gain possessions or powers that I think people will look at me as having and say, "Oh, isn't he great?" But because I have given my life over to something that, first of all, was false, and secondly, is powerless to really change my existence, then when the conditions change that supported that sense of myself through the eyes of others, suddenly I think, oh, now I'm worthless because other people see me as being of no significance. And this is a terrible way to go through life, basically selling our soul for 30 pieces of silver.
Guy, one of the biggest things that people ask, they'll say, I understand what Guy's saying, and I understand the lessons and how I have to detach from the false beliefs and my desires. But the question always is, how? How do I do it? It's great that I need to do it, but how?
That's what my new book answers completely. It helps the person remember. We have so much, how do I say this to you, so much vested in this idea that we are going to create for ourselves a kingdom of heaven on earth. The kingdom of what is true and good and loving and kind already exists. Our task isn't to try to create it, but to remember that it is already present within us. Joan, listeners, how many times in our lives have we done the things we didn't want to do and couldn't remember that that wasn't who we are and what we wanted to be until it was too late? But once we were able to remember that this greater, more patient, truer character lives within us, and then align ourselves with that character, then we can't act against ourselves or others. So my book, The Secret of Your Immortal Self, is designed to help the reader awaken and remember that already living within him or her is this timeless nature that simply requires that we pay more attention to it than we do to the things that pass in time that bring us all of these troubles. It's a simple question of what do we put first. It doesn't mean we don't strive to be as best we can. It just means we start to redefine the values of what is most important to us.
Guys, so many of us live in the past. We're stuck there, unable to let it go. And I think that's, I think that's really what ties into what you were just talking about, because we're trying to change what's happened. And one of the things that I find that you say is so interesting is that you say we have the power to change the past. What do you mean by that?
Here's one of the most important things that any of us can learn. You cannot change who you are by thinking about who you are. Thinking about who you are is actually living in the past, because when you're thinking about yourself, you are reliving events that have defined you. The more you think about yourself and live in the past that way, the more you strengthen the grip of that nature that believes it is in fact alive when it is nothing but a memory. As we see the truth of something like this, Joan, we start to be what I call living in the presence moment, in this true now, in which our awareness of ourselves, the light of this awareness, begins to change our character, because through that awareness we can't act against ourselves. Now, what does that mean ultimately? It means that I begin not only to change my path going forward, I go before thee to make the crooked places straight for those that like Christian scripture, but by those changes in my nature, I am no longer part of repeating what has punished myself and others, so that the whole of my life begins to change from the beginning to the end. And it's much too deep to go into a short interview here, but there actually is an essay in my book about how changing ourselves in the present actually changes everything about our past, including our regrets and mistakes.
The book is The Secret of Your Immortal Self, Key Lessons for Realizing the Divinity Within by Guy Finley. If you'd like to learn more about Guy, you can visit his website, guyfinley.org, and to learn more about the book, you can visit yourimmortalself.com. And Guy, I know you're offering free gifts at that book site. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
My foundation has put 4 very special gifts right there online when you order from yourimmortalself.com. It includes a 4-hour, just published audio album, a download called The Golden Rules of Self-Realization, a free meditation guide, 365 Days to Let Go, and a few other wonderful gifts at yourimmortalself.com if you order the book through that site, yourimmortalself.com.
Guy, very quickly, before we run out of time, I want to end the show with a brief discussion about useless suffering, because I think that is what we really do to ourselves on a daily basis. We suffer needlessly. And you say that we can stop it. And I want to know, how can we stop being our own worst enemy?
Imagine a person who has a typewriter and somehow a couple of the letters get switched. I'm talking about the old type. Remember where you hit a key and that thing would come up and strike the page?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah, so many of us do. Well, anyway, is there anything that man or woman can do by getting negative over the misspelled words that appear on the paper? Is any of that suffering useful until they begin to realize, I've got to fix the way this machine works?
Mm-hmm.
So that useless suffering is repeating behaviors that produce the same outcome and then resenting what's been produced. Useful suffering, conscious suffering, means that I'm going to go and I'm going to do the interior work of understanding. I must change inwardly before I can change outwardly. Useless suffering is resenting and resisting the effects of my actions. Useful suffering is becoming conscious of my action before I am defeated by it.
Guy, thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned, you can read Guy's article every month in our digital magazine, Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7, which is available at cyacyl.com. Guy, again, thank you. It is always a pleasure to have you here.
I love our time together, Joan. I just wish it were longer.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.